So you want to start a car wash business. The first time I saw the numbers, I thought I had found the perfect business. It was a cold Sunday afternoon, and I was sitting across from one of the busiest car washes in the city. Cars kept turning into the entrance. Some drivers chose a basic wash for $15. Others paid $35 for interior cleaning. A few ordered the premium package for $60. I watched for almost an hour and counted 46 cars. My brain immediately started doing the math. If the average customer paid $28, the business had collected around $1,288 in one afternoon. If it washed 40 cars per day, that could mean more than $33,600 in monthly revenue. I gripped the steering wheel and thought, why am I still working for someone else? The business looked simple. Rent a good location, buy pressure washers and vacuums, hire employees, put up a bright sign. Customers bring dirty cars, and I return clean ones. Every vehicle seemed like easy money. What I could not see was everything standing between revenue and profit. I could not see the water meter spinning after every wash. I could not hear the electricity being consumed by pumps, heaters, vacuums, lights, and drying equipment. I could not see how quickly shampoo, wax, towels, brushes, and chemicals disappeared. I also could not see the owner checking his phone because one employee had not arrived, another had damaged a floor mat, and a pressure washer was making a sound that usually meant an expensive repair. From the parking lot, I saw money coming in. I did not see money rushing back out. 3 months later, I opened my own car wash. I used nearly all my savings and borrowed the rest from a relative. I told myself the debt would disappear quickly once the business opened. The location was near a busy road, apartment buildings, and a shopping center. The rent was high, but I called it the price of traffic. Then the real spending began. I paid for renovations, drainage, plumbing, electrical upgrades, permits, signs, cameras, uniforms, a payment terminal, and a small waiting room. I bought pressure washers, industrial vacuums, hoses, pumps, water tanks, brushes, towels, and chemicals. Every time I believed the setup was finished, someone handed me another bill. Before washing a single car, I had already spent about $18,000. I believed opening was the difficult part. Once the doors were open, the business would start paying me back. On our first busy Saturday, we washed 53 cars. The payment screen kept flashing. $15, $35, $60. By evening, the total looked better than expected. My employees were moving quickly, the waiting area was full, and cars were still arriving. I thought I was watching profit. I was actually watching revenue. On Monday, wages were due. We needed more chemicals and clean towels. The electricity bill was higher than planned. One vacuum lost suction. A hose split near the handle. A customer returned because his seats were damp. Another claimed one of my workers had scratched his door and demanded compensation. By Friday, most of the money I'd celebrated was gone. That was when I learned the first rule of the car wash business. A full parking lot does not mean a full bank account. Every car brought money in, but every car also consumed water, electricity, chemicals, employee time, and part of the equipment's life. More customers meant more revenue, but also more pressure, mistakes, and chances for something to break. I had not built a machine that printed money. I had built a system where dozens of small expenses attacked every payment before I could call it profit. And then the weather changed. Rain covered the city for 4 days. The road stayed wet, the parking area stayed empty, and my employees waited for customers who never came. The wages did not stop. The rent did not stop. The loan did not stop. That was when I realized my expenses were predictable, but my customers were not. For 4 days, I arrived early and stared at the road. Rain did not stop. Cars passed, but nobody wanted to wash a vehicle that would be dirty again before reaching home. My employees sat inside, scrolling on their phones. I kept checking the entrance. They did not. On the first rainy day, we washed 9 cars. On the second, 6. On the third, 4. The revenue barely covered wages and supplies, but the rent and loan stayed the same. The utilities did not disappear because the parking lot was empty. That was the second rule I learned. My costs followed a schedule, but my customers followed the sky. When the weather cleared, I expected a flood of cars. For a few hours, I was right. Drivers lined up and the team worked nonstop. I relaxed. Then, after lunch, the line became shorter. By evening, it was gone. A new car wash had opened less than 2 kilometers away. Their sign promised a basic wash for $12. Mine cost $15. The next morning, one of my regular customers drove past my entrance and turned toward them. I stood outside and watched his car disappear. My first reaction was anger. My second was panic. I cut the basic wash to $13. Cars started returning, and for 2 days I felt clever. I thought I had defended the business. Then I checked the numbers. At $15, a basic wash had never produced $15 of profit. Water, electricity, chemicals, wages, and payment fees consumed most of it. At $13, the margin became so thin that one complaint or repeated wash could erase the profit from several customers. I had increased traffic by selling work too cheaply. The parking lot looked busy, but the business was weaker. That was my first major mistake. I treated price as the only reason people chose a car wash. I started asking customers why they came to us. Some mentioned our location. Others liked one careful employee. Others trusted us not to damage their cars. A few simply hated waiting. That changed how I saw the business. I was not only selling clean cars, I was selling speed, convenience, consistency, and trust. So I stopped trying to be the cheapest option. I created a loyalty card. After 5 washes, the 6th was discounted. I offered monthly packages to taxi drivers and delivery workers who needed regular cleaning. I assigned one employee to inspect every vehicle before it left. I also recorded every complaint. The results were not immediate. Some days were still painfully quiet. But the customers who returned began returning more often. One taxi driver brought 2 colleagues. A delivery company asked for a fleet price. An apartment manager let me place cards in a nearby lobby. For the first time, I had customers I could expect instead of customers I could only hope for. But location still controlled more of the business than I wanted to admit. During weekday mornings, traffic moved quickly past us, but most drivers were heading to work. They did not have time to stop. Our busiest hours came in the evenings and on weekends, which meant I was paying rent for a location that produced little for most of the day. Then winter arrived. The temperature dropped, hoses stiffened, water froze near the drainage channel, and customers became impatient when the process took longer. On some days, demand rose because cars were covered in road dirt. On other days, the cold kept everyone away. I finally understood that a busy road was not automatically a good location. The right location needed drivers who could see us, enter safely, wait comfortably, and leave without fighting traffic. It also needed enough demand during more than a few profitable hours each week. By then, I had stopped asking, "How many cars can we wash?" I had started asking a better question. How many profitable customers can we serve consistently? That question changed everything. Because the next threat did not come from the weather or a competitor. It came from my equipment room. The sound came from behind the wall. At first, it was a metallic rattle. Then the pressure washer coughed, lost power, and stopped while a customer's car was still covered in foam. One employee stared at me. Another kept pressing the switch. It did not. 3 cars were waiting, 2 were inside, and 1 driver was demanding an explanation. I called a technician. He listened for less than a minute and gave me the answer I did not want. The pump had failed. The repair would cost $1,800, and the replacement part would take 2 days to arrive. 2 days sounded short until I did the math. Rent, wages, and utilities continued, but one closed bay cut our capacity almost in half. Customers saw the line and drove away. The broken machine was not only a repair bill, it was lost revenue. By the second evening, missed sales had cost more than the repair. That was the third rule. Equipment keeps demanding money after you buy it. Hoses cracked. Vacuum motors weakened. Pumps overheated. Drainage channels clogged. Small failures arrived without warning, usually during busy hours. I had spent almost all my capital opening the car wash. I had equipment, signs, employees, and a polished waiting area. What I did not have was an emergency reserve. So when something broke, I used money intended for chemicals and wages. Then I delayed a supplier payment. Then I borrowed again. One machine failure had pushed my cash flow into survival mode, and the equipment was only one source of mistakes. A week later, a new employee used the wrong chemical on a customer's dashboard. Pale marks appeared, and the customer noticed immediately. He did not care that the employee was new. He did not care that we had served dozens of cars correctly that day. He saw damage, and my company's name was on the receipt. I refunded the service, paid for restoration, and offered 2 free washes. The direct cost hurt. The real damage came later. The customer posted photos. By evening, strangers in a local group were debating whether my staff could be trusted. I wanted to blame the employee. Instead, I reviewed our training. There was almost none. I had shown new workers the tools and expected others to teach the rest. Chemical use varied. Some rushed, some skipped inspections. I had hired people, but I had not built a process. So I created one. Every service received a checklist. We photographed the car before work began. Chemicals were labeled and measured. New employees practiced under supervision. Before a vehicle left, one person inspected the body, windows, interior, and customer belongings. At first, the staff hated it. They said the checklist was slow, photographs were unnecessary, and they already knew the job. Then complaints began to fall. Chemical use also dropped because employees stopped pouring products without measuring them. Repeated washes became less common. Customers waited longer, but results became consistent. That was the second major twist. Better quality control looked like an extra cost, but it saved money. The cheapest employee was not always the least expensive. A careless worker earning a lower wage could create refunds, repairs, bad reviews, and lost customers worth far more than the salary difference. I began tracking each shift. Cars completed, chemical use, complaints, rework, and service time. The numbers showed me what instinct had hidden. My fastest team was not my most profitable because it created the most repeated work. My most experienced employee was not the best supervisor because he ignored small mistakes. One quiet worker produced the fewest complaints and the most returning customers. For the first time, I was managing by evidence, but there was still one problem. Even with better systems, loyal customers, and fewer mistakes, profit kept disappearing in places I could not immediately see. To find it, I had to stop looking at the cars and start studying every dollar. I opened a spreadsheet and started rebuilding the business one payment at a time. Until then, I had treated the daily sales total like a score. A high number meant a good day. A low number meant a bad one. But revenue was only the first line. Under it sat water, electricity, chemicals, wages, rent, repairs, taxes, refunds, advertising, and loan payments. When I listed everything, the picture changed. One month, the car wash had generated $34,000 in revenue. I had told friends the business was doing well. After all expenses, the actual profit was less than $3,200, and even that number was misleading. Part of the money had already been used to repay debt. Another part needed to stay in the business for future repairs and supplies. The amount I could safely take home was much smaller. That was the fourth rule. Revenue shows activity, profit shows efficiency, and cash flow shows whether the business survives. I began calculating the real cost of each service. The basic wash brought in customers, but its margin was thin. The premium package produced more profit, yet it took longer and created more chances for delay. Interior cleaning used less water but required more labor. The service with the highest price was not always the most profitable. The service with the fastest turnover was not always the best either. I found that several popular discounts were quietly losing money. Customers loved them, employees stayed busy, and the payment terminal kept ringing. But every discounted wash consumed nearly the same labor and materials as a full-price wash. I had created demand without creating profit, so I changed the menu. I removed weak discounts, raised the price of services with high chemical use, and bundled profitable extras such as wax, tire treatment, and quick interior cleaning. I also stopped offering every service at every hour. During peak periods, we focused on faster packages. Detailed cleaning was scheduled for quieter times. That improved capacity without buying more equipment. Then I looked at employee scheduling. I had been staffing for the busiest possible day, which meant paying people to wait during slow hours. I changed shifts around actual demand and created a small bonus tied to quality, speed, and repeat customers. Wages did not fall dramatically. Waste did. The biggest surprise came from customer retention. Advertising brought new drivers, but many visited once and disappeared. A returning customer cost far less to attract and usually trusted us enough to buy higher value services. So I built a simple database. We recorded names, vehicle types, service history, and preferred times. We sent reminders after bad weather and offered package renewals before customers forgot about us. I had once believed marketing meant constantly finding strangers. Now I understood that the cheapest customer was often the one I had already served well. After 3 months, the business looked calmer. Revenue was not much higher, but profit improved because fewer dollars leaked away. That was the expectation reversal I needed. Growth did not come from washing as many cars as possible. It came from making each wash more predictable. Still, I knew the business was not safe. One bad month could undo everything. So I created 3 reserves. One for equipment, one for wages and rent, and one for unexpected claims. At first, keeping cash untouched felt painful. I wanted to use it to renovate the waiting area or buy another machine. But reserves gave me something more valuable than appearance. Time. Time to repair equipment without borrowing. Time to survive a rainy week. Time to solve a complaint without missing payroll. For the first time, I was not only operating the car wash, I was protecting it. Success, I learned, creates its own danger when a weak system is pushed too hard, and that protection would soon be tested by the busiest month we had ever seen. The busiest month began with sunshine. After weeks of bad weather, the roads dried, dust covered the city, and customers arrived before we opened. By noon, the entrance was blocked. By evening, we had set a new daily record. I should have felt successful. Instead, control was slipping away. Employees rushed. Towels were reused before drying. Chemicals were mixed too quickly. Customers waited longer than promised and kept asking one question: how much longer? The sales total looked excellent. The quality did not. Revenue climbed for 3 days. Then complaints followed. One customer found water under his floor mat. Another said we had missed dirt near the wheels. A third returned because wax marks were visible under the sun. Each problem looked small alone. Together, they created refunds, rework, and bad reviews. I had believed more customers would automatically create more profit. But when the system reached its limit, more customers created more mistakes. That was the fifth rule. Growth multiplies whatever already exists. If the process is strong, growth multiplies profit. If the process is weak, growth multiplies chaos. My first instinct was to hire more people immediately. I hired 3 temporary workers and added an evening shift. Capacity increased, but training became harder. Experienced employees had to stop working to explain basic tasks. New workers used more chemicals, moved slowly, and made more errors. Extra wages appeared immediately. The extra profit did not. Then a supplier offered me a second pressure washer at a discount. I nearly bought it. Another bay, I thought, could reduce waiting and raise revenue. But I remembered the spreadsheet. A new machine required installation, maintenance, utilities, and enough demand to stay busy. Buying equipment for one crowded month could leave me paying for empty capacity later. So I delayed the purchase. Instead, I studied the queue. The problem was not only the number of cars, it was how we accepted them. We accepted every customer, even when we had no space. Detailed interior jobs entered the same line as quick exterior washes. One complicated vehicle could delay 6 simple ones. I separated the schedule. Quick washes received dedicated bays. Interior cleaning required appointments. Premium detailing moved to quiet weekdays. Customers received honest waiting times. Some left when they heard the delay. At first, that felt like lost money. Then I realized an angry customer in a 2-hour queue was more expensive than one who returned tomorrow. I also gave each shift leader authority to stop accepting cars when quality began to fall. Turning customers away felt like failure, but protecting service protected our reputation. By the end of the month, revenue was still our highest ever. Profit improved too, but not because we washed every car that entered. It improved because we stopped pretending capacity was unlimited. The reserve covered extra wages and a pump repair. Checklists prevented careless mistakes. Regular customers used their packages, and the delivery company renewed its agreement. For once, the optimistic outcome became real, but I could see the other version clearly. If I had cut prices, hired too quickly, borrowed for equipment, and ignored complaints, the same busy month could have pushed the business toward a loss. Success and failure were separated by decisions that looked small in the moment. A schedule, a checklist, a cash reserve, a manager willing to say no. That month changed my definition of a successful owner. I was no longer the person at the entrance counting cars. I was responsible for making sure every car added value instead of simply adding work. And when the month ended, I finally knew the answer to the question that had brought me into this business. A car wash could make good money, but only if I controlled what happened after the money came in.